Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to a video. Hopefully this one will be a little more concise and educational than some of the other ones. This is going to be, not surprisingly, all about camera control. This is something that a lot of people think is not super important, right? Like, everybody kind of has their own way of doing it, and it's one of those things where, myself included, I didn't know that my camera control was not great until, like, somebody pointed it out. And this is something I notice constantly when I'm doing coaching or when I'm watching streams or anything, really. It's just people are not maximizing their use of camera positioning and camera control just in general. So, the first question we have to ask, and the whole point of this presentation, is what is the point of camera positioning? And the point, not surprisingly, is information. It's all about information. Your camera is meant to be providing you with new information, and you're supposed to make the most out of it, right? You don't need your camera reaffirming things you already know. And again, that sounds very simple, but as we'll see, it's very easy to make mistakes and not get the most out of your camera positioning. So, we've got some basic questions to ask yourself. I'm sure there's more, but these are kind of the three that I really think of. So, again, the whole point is information, right? So, what information am I gaining from my camera positioning? So, the first point I'm going to make is, can I see the relevant enemy heroes in my lane, in a push, or in a team fight? This one is probably the most basic. But if you're, let's say, in mid lane, like we'll show in some slides which have screen caps that I've notated on, if you're in mid lane, you want to see the enemy, your opponent, right? The screenshots we're using are of a Kunkka versus a Zeus matchup, which was from an in-house, which you should show up to. They're fun. But if you can't see them, that's a problem. Clearly, like, you should have knowledge of your opposing hero because they're a threat to you. If you're pushing, you should say, hey, we're pushing tier 3 mid. Where are the enemy heroes? Are they going to be able to gank us? Are they all off the map? Could they be smoked and could they be wrapping around us? That's information you want to have. Or be if you don't have that information, it's important to note, like, hey, we don't know these things. Or in a team fight, if you, are you looking at in a team fight, are you looking at places that you already know are irrelevant, right? If they're all at bottom tier 1 and you're looking somewhere else, it's like, all right, well, we know all the enemies are at bottom tier 1. Our camera should be there if we're in that team fight. You don't want to be lagging behind and then say, like, oh, where'd the Slark go? It's like, well, we know he just pounced over there, but if your camera positioning was better, then you would have known that and you wouldn't have to ask that question and he wouldn't have got away from you. So the other one, and again, we're focusing on mid lane because that's the easiest way to show this information, but it's relevant in all lanes and in all phases of the game. But the question we have to ask is, can I see the paths that I'm likely to be ganked by, right? So this is just a basic, like, threat assessment, right? If you are in mid lane, you don't want to be looking somewhere that isn't providing you with useful information if you're threatened by enemy heroes, right? If there's a missing bounty hunter, which is a bad example because he's invisible, or if there's like a missing Earthshaker and it's daytime, you should be in a position where you can see, like, hey, he's going to fissure me from here, he's going to fissure me from there. But if you're camera cognizant, I guess that's what we'll call it, you'll notice, like, all right, I see him on this side of the river. I know he's there. We're safe. Same thing with really any hero. You know, if you have good camera positioning, an Ogre Magi with like 400 range on stun is going to have a lot harder time stunning you than if you're not paying attention and he walks up on you because you're looking at some other place of the lane, or if you just have a bunch of negative space that's not productive. And the last one kind of ties into everything, but that question, and probably the most important question, is how much of my camera positioning is providing me with worthless information, right? Could that space be used better? Is my camera positioning giving me redundant or useless information that I already have or that I already know, right? So again, using the mid lane example, if we are seeing that our tier 1 mid is in our camera, we don't need that information, right? You know your tier 1 mid is there, or your tier 1 bottom, or your tier 2 mid, or whatever the heck tower you want to do. You know it's there, right? It doesn't matter that you have it in your camera, so it just shouldn't be there, right? That's space that could be used better. So you don't need to reaffirm stuff like that. I assume you've been playing Dota for more than 5 minutes. You know, hey, my tower is still there. And that's like an extreme example, but still, like, if you're in a team fight, you don't need to be seeing your four teammates because you know they're behind you, or you know they're ahead of you, or, yada, yada, yada. There's many examples. And again, all that space that you're consuming, reaffirming, or gaining useless information, or gaining nothing, is time or is positioning that could be used to gain better information on your opponents or for yourself if you're trying to be aggressive. So these are my camera settings. Everybody kind of has slightly different settings. When I observe, when I cast, I generally take my camera deceleration, turn that to 1, and I take my speed down to like 2500, which isn't super relevant to everybody. Some people don't use edge pan or screen shake. Personally, I like them, and screen shake happens so often, I don't care that much. Again, like, do what works for you, but I would definitely say you have to have like a decent camera speed, and camera deceleration, anything below like 25 I think is unacceptable. Honestly, like, it just is such a mess if you have it low. It's really hard to get a lot of information if your camera's slow and unwieldy. And so that's the gist of it. Some people use camera speeds that are even higher than this, but this is kind of what I'm comfortable with. So, if you want to use that for a baseline for you, do whatever. All right. So this is our first screenshot, and this one has no notations because we're just going to talk about it, right? So this is a camera position that I really like. I think this is a good example of what our ideal camera positioning should be. So if we look at it, we have ourself in the bottom left-hand corner, and we are now looking at, just a basic, it's a minute 30. We're just CSing. We're just taking control of the mid lane, looking at what's going on. So in this, we see our our opposing laner, and we have ourself, and we don't have a lot of negative space, as we'll see in this, which is notated. Right, so our camera position, again, we see our full creep wave, we see our opposing laner, and additionally, we're seeing all these different paths that we could be aggressed upon by. If there's, it's not happening clearly by the minimap, and I suppose camera control 101 is important, but looking at your minimap is similarly important. I don't think I need to make a presentation on that. Everybody knows it. Look at your minimap, guys. It's important. Anyway, we're seeing all these possible paths we could be ganked by, right? Somebody coming from top rune could be coming through this left arrow or this middle arrow or even on this top left arrow, or you see it. My cursor's there. The like north arrow, I suppose. Also, if an opposing jungler was smoking on me, their smoke would probably break right around their range creep, and that would be very important information. Similarly, if an opponent TP'd, this huge arrow over here would be the way that they would be rotating on me by, and it's all very important information, right? And again, if somebody took bottom rune, we can see them through this river. There is, of course, the path that is kind of by the Tidebringer symbol, which is another venue by which somebody getting a bottom rune would be aggressing on you. But realistically, you can't view everything, so this is just, a general camera position that I like. This, on the other hand, is a camera position which is bad. It's not, it could always be worse, right? But this is an example of a less than ideal camera position. And we'll see, we have all this negative space, right? All the red marks are space that's just worthless to us, right? We don't need to know that all this area is how it is because nothing is happening there and nothing can happen, right? Unless like they do some crazy, super unlikely move, nobody is going to be like Phoenix diving you or blinking on you from behind there. And if anybody is ganking you from this bottom right hand portion, this is still, this is still useless information, right? So this is just wasted space that could be used otherwise. Kind of like if we look at this earlier one, we're not viewing all that space because we don't need it, right? So we are just viewing here. Okay. And again, it's not completely worthless, right? We see two venues by which we could be ganked. Granted, these are the two least likely venues by which you're ganked in the mid lane if you're playing Radiant. But, to its credit, there's some merit. Again, as we talked about earlier, we're not seeing the opposing mid laner, which is a problem. Sure, we know he's there. We can see him a little bit. But this is really less than ideal. So, yes, that's the gist of it. This is another example of very hero-centric. A lot of people... It's kind of intuitive if you played a lot of like third-person games to have your hero in the center, or if you're microing units, have the units in the center. And while that's intuitive and while that feels natural, it's not good per se, or not even per se, just in general, it's not good. With this camera information, what we're gaining is now it's a little better than the last one, right? We see these two new venues by which we're ganked. We still barely see the opposing mid laner. and we're not seeing all this up in the top right. If somebody's TPing into the mid lane and ganking us, we don't know. We have no clue. That's very dangerous. Again, we have all this wasted space up in behind us, behind the range creep. That's again very dangerous. It's not giving us anything, and it's detracting from potential camera information that we could have gotten otherwise. All right, and we do see a little bit of this way we could be ganked, but again, you want to have more information than this, right? All this big red spot, that's really what we're worried about. All right, so this is in a team fight, and this is right after TPing in. This is a very natural thing to do, right? Again, we're centering on our hero, and again, it feels very natural. You think, hey, I'm the important one. I'm playing the Kunkka or I'm playing the Rubik or whatever. I want to have them in the center of my control and in my vision. The problem here is that the opposing, if we look to the minimap, actually you guys can't see the minimap because that's where my face is. But anyway, the opposing heroes are in this top right position, and that is information that we're losing, right? Because we're centered on the hero, and we're not seeing those people, right? So if we look here, look at all this red space. We don't need to see our teammates. We know they're there. We don't need to see ourselves. We know we're there. We need to see the Slark and the Witch Doctor and the Warlock, which are up here. And this is a very dangerous position to be in, right? If you're at a team fight, this will cost you kills, right? If I'm playing the Kunkka here, which coincidentally I was, in my cameras like this, I can't send a torrent out to this top right corner because I can't even click there because my camera is centered on my hero. And especially when you have long range spells, that's really important information that you want to have. This next image is how my player perspective should have been / was in this instance, and this is a much better site. And actually, we see the torrent here. The information that we're gaining here is we're seeing all these 3 people retreating, which is excellent information, and that lets us set up abilities. That lets us know, hey, they're on the run, we should chase them down, or hey, in a different instance, hey, they're coming at us, we should back up, or we should prepare to fight, etc. Especially if we're playing the Tide Hunter here. If you're not looking over here, you don't know, like, oh boy, I could blink Ravage, or oh, I could blink an Anchor Smash and do damage. It's all very important information to have, and this is all gotten through the fact that we're not centered on our hero. We're not even looking at our hero. You can't even see our hero in this instance. So perfect, that's good. And again, this is the important information we're getting, right? We see the group of heroes. We see an arrow. This was, if the Slark had run this way, he could have escaped. And yes, we do still have some negative space, which is less than ideal. But again, realistically, you're always going to have some negative space. Maybe if we had moved a little further to the northeast, this would be a slightly better image. But overall, this is a pretty good camera positioning to have an instance like this. So that's the gist of it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we all learned something. I'm sure, this all seems very basic, but when you really apply it and I know Roland specifically has been talking about recently, when somebody points out to you the things that you should be doing, and if you're really cognizant of like where your camera is, you're going to start noticing these things. And you're going to start notice, hey, my camera control is not great, and it's something you work on, and it's something that takes time, but once you've got it down, it's a huge asset to learning to climb MMR, huge asset just in general. So again, practice it and try to just, again, we've used the word tons of times, but just be cognizant of the information you're gaining and the information you could be gaining but are not. So again,